This is a city of change. Change brought about by dedication and determination. These three men have changed the face of Dallas forever. Their strong will took a city with a past and shaped a city with a future. From vast acres of blackland prairie, a center for technology and higher education has grown. These men have shown us that to succeed, man needs to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. In the middle of the 20th century, science was paving the way to the good life. Technology, such as the invention of the integrated circuit at TI, was fast becoming the gauge by which a community's strength was measured. The founders of UT Dallas recognized higher education as the key to keeping up with technology.
Well, the early goal of the Graduate Research Center was to create a high technology environment in the Dallas-Fort Worth complex, so that Texas Instruments in particular would be able to attract and to hold new high-tech employees from around the country to come to Dallas.
It's obvious, it was obvious to my husband, that quality education that was available, easily available, was one of the things that would be so vital to this community, to this region, to this state, to this nation.
We thought it would be best to gather in some outstanding scholars in various disciplines from really all around the world, and we did that. That was the beginning of the think tank that became finally UTD.
Several people have asked me, what about Gene's interest in education and his determination to bring education to this area and to this state? I cannot think of any one specific story, because it was an ongoing determination, an ongoing concern, and ongoing work.
The results of Jonsson, McDermott, and Green's efforts can be seen throughout Dallas. Cooperation was the basis of their success together. It was ever present, particularly during the early years. During a time of wildcatter oil exploration, Eugene McDermott joined with scientist John Karcher to develop a scientific technique for locating oil deposits.
Erik Jonsson had been hired by J.C. Karcher to be foreman of an instrument-making shop up in Newark, New Jersey. And I had to be up in New York, New Jersey on a contract later for a crew up in upstate New York, and I had to go by there to pick up the instruments. And that's how I met Erik Jonsson.
GSI split into two successful companies, GSI and Coronado Corporation. Coronado owners decided to sell out to a major oil producer, but Jonsson, McDermott, and Green were determined to keep control of GSI.
I talked with Fred Florence. I persuaded him to lend us enough money to buy the whole company from its predecessor company and give us a chance to see what we could do with it.
Their background in seismic exploration proved very useful throughout the war in the development of airborne submarine detection equipment. Working with the Navy brought Erik Jonsson in contact with several people who were to become key players at TI and UT Dallas.
Lloyd Berkner was an unusual man who was an admiral in the Navy Bureau of Aeronautics and had retained his flying ticket even into the time when he was in his 60s. An unusual man because he was a good scientist and at the same time a very good engineer applying what science he knew. And he had a mind capable of learning whatever he didn't know in the sciences if that proved to be necessary. During the war, he ran a group of 10 universities who had representatives on Long Island called Associated Universities. And this is one of the things about academe that made him very attractive to me in helping us to establish a technical university here. And Haggerty was this young procurement officer who had never worked in the technical fields before in oil finding or any other seismic effort. Last of all, I guess, submarine hunting. However, he was one of the best engineers ever graduated up to that time by Marquette in electrical engineering. And here was Haggerty, who was in electrical engineering to begin with, very bright, very competent, a man who got things done, and a man whom I had complete trust by the end of the war.
Through the post-war years, GSI continued to expand. Oil exploration became secondary to electronics, and in 1951, Texas Instruments was formed.
And I had a 2-year sentence as president of the Chamber of Commerce in 1957 and 8, and in that time, it looked to me very plain that we couldn't have a great city without a great university. And that meant a great university with strong engineering in it. It called for technical people, and there were no great profusion of technical jobs in Dallas at that time.
Well, the idea was to get it started. And we had in mind, too, in order to get it started, Texas Instruments would provide the faculty from our existing engineers, to do that. And the first objective was to get students from the existing universities who were ready to do graduate work to come to this new facility, a graduate research center.
Land was purchased for the Graduate Research Center at the current site of UT Dallas in September, with groundbreaking for the first building the following spring. In December, the Graduate Research Center's impact began to be felt. The first international symposium on gravitational collapse and related astrophysical subjects was covered in numerous scientific journals and popular magazines. In a New York Times article on this symposium, the term quasar first appeared in print. Research in Dallas continued to gain national respect.
And finally, we had to find a way to turn this monster, which had by then one big building and a few very small ones, and turn it into a useful institution in the hands of academics who could, if they would, develop it into a complete university capable of going through and even beyond the PhD level, because that was the level we had already begun. And that wasn't competitive with anything in the area.
So we began to realize then, if the Graduate Research Center was going to have to attract students itself, without depending on the universities, existing universities, to supply them. And that meant turning it into eventually into a university. And that was the creation eventually of the University of Texas, Dallas.
On June 13, 1969, Governor Preston Smith came on campus to sign the bill that established the University of Texas at Dallas. UT Dallas officially opened on July 1st. Progress at UT Dallas has been steady. Founders North was completed in 1972. The first upper-level degrees were awarded in 1973, and the first bachelor's degree was awarded in 1976. The Jonsson, Green, and McDermott buildings were dedicated on October 18, 1976. The Student Union Building opened in 1982, and the Multipurpose Facility Building was first occupied in May of 1988. UT Dallas has expanded beyond the North Dallas campus. The Collier Center of Communication Disorders merged with UT Dallas in March of 1975. The Collier Center houses a nationally recognized clinical facility and numerous communication-related research projects. Another of UT Dallas's off-campus program is the UT Dallas Geological Information Library. This library is the definitive information source for geological research and oil exploration for the entire Southwest. From Blackland Prairie to high technology, this transformation could only have occurred through determination. Dallas has taken hold of its future. With the potential addition of lower-level undergraduate students at UT Dallas, this city will finally have the educational and research institution envisioned by the founders so long ago. And more important to the North Dallas area, the air of technology is present, creating an environment for innovation.
I think this is going to be increasingly recognized as the university increases in its strength. It will attract industry. Because that's one of the first things in industry, and looking around the country, they're interested, well, what kind of environment is it for supporting labor? Well, Texas is a darn good place for that.
So our ambition doesn't need to be inhibited by sharp limits on anything in advanced technology. We've got to be there, and it is desirable for all of Texas that we be there first.
How do I describe my husband? Well, first, he was kind, the kindest person you ever saw. Two, he was generous, but he never considered whether it was tax advantageous to give to a person or a project. If he wanted to do it, he did it, not next week, but today. Certainly he was curious. He really wanted to know what made people and institutions, what made them tick. Why did they do what they did? And that, I guess, he was just such a lot of fun to be with, that I can remember telling my mother that to go to a party, to enter a big room with Gene was a wonderful occasion because everyone would want to come and say hello to him. But of course, along with everything else, he'd say, don't overdo it. So I think that's enough.
Regarding my relationship with Erik, I got the highest regard for him. We've known each other since 1932, and today we're still the best of friends.
I like almost everything about Cecil Green, except he's slightly crazy. He's 2 years older or so than I am, which means practically 90. And he spends a third of his time in La Jolla because there's a good scientific community out there. A third of his time in Dallas because TI is here and he still touches that. And a third of his time in airplane seats going to see scientists or engineers that he knows around the world who are trying to do something that can't be done.
Well, Eugene McDermott and I were the best of friends. We're not only associates, but we were longtime friends. And that can be proved. When he died, when he passed away, his wife was holding one hand and I was holding the other.
And in closing, may I express gratitude to the University of Texas at Dallas and congratulations for the great goals that they have achieved during the last 20 years, and to wish them grand future success in the next 20 years, indeed, the next hundreds of years to come. Thank you.
My father was a storekeeper back in, as far as I can remember, which goes to age 3. He had had a store known as a stationery store and cigar store. That sold, however, a lot of things, much as a drugstore does today. Anything that customers wanted, he carried. candy, ice cream, and other things too that were very interesting to a small boy. I'd go every Saturday and take my savings of the week, which might be 50 or 60 cents or maybe $1 in a good week, and I'd go to a book department of a department store. And after walking the 2 miles or so, I'd look around for bargains because I didn't have much money. One Saturday morning, looked around the bargain department, and here was a leather-bound book, and it was well leather-bound, and it was only $1. And I didn't know why they'd sell a leather-bound book for $1 when I was paying 25 cents for paper cover books, and here was one for $1, leather-bound. I had to have it. And after looking it over, I found out why. The leather binding was perfect, the book was perfect. It was a book of Tennyson's poems, but it was bound upside down. Well, I cured that. I just held the book upside down, and then I could read those poems, and I enjoyed them. And it was interesting to me that I should buy that particular book. And about 75 or 80 years later, I should open a copy of a monthly magazine put out by the American Society of Mechanical Engineers and find a Tennyson quote by the president that I didn't know. And it was from the longest poem in that book, Ulysses, and that was too long for me at that time. I could take in a page of poetry and even memorize some of it, but Ulysses was too much. But the quote was perfect for what I thought I was doing with my life. And the quote was very simple and quite easily remembered. It was this: to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield.